Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before we get into it with our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone, if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Alysha Kempf on the podcast. She's coming to us all the way from Australia. We got another Aussie on the podcast. I believe it's our dozenth. I'll have to double check because I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, she's a bodybuilder. If you couldn't tell everyone, I don't. Half these guests, you kind of have to remind people they're bodybuilders, but like you're one of them where it's like, nah, yeah, she works out a lot. You give off that aura, but yeah, she's on here to share her health and fitness journey and discuss all things health and fitness. But most importantly, see, I got my one tongue tied and twisted moment out of the way here real quick. But most importantly, she's our current guest, Alysha. Thank you so much for coming on.
No problems. Welcome to be here.
Well, I ask this question every single time as an icebreaker, even though I get so much crap for it. But hey, it's my go-to. What is the weather like today?
It's actually really lovely. We're just kind of, moving into some warmer weather here. So I don't want to rub it in, but yes, it is quite nice outside.
I forget you're on the southern part of the world and we're on the northern part. That yeah, our seasons do mix up a little bit, but good for you. I will say that at least enjoy it because you have it, while I sit up here and suffer. But before we get into all my winter weather woes, because believe me, that's an entire different topic to talk about. To start things off, Alysha, why don't you just give us your backstory on what inspired and motivated you to get in shape and how that led to you becoming a bodybuilder?
Sure. Actually, when I was like in high school, I was pretty much the unfit kid. And the kid that kind of was a little bit sneaky and always tried to get out of doing any physical education. So it wasn't until later in life when I actually kind of made a very conscious decision to try and be more active and to kind of live a healthier lifestyle. So I actually ended up becoming a runner. Initially, my first goal was actually just to be able to run 5Ks without stopping. And after I achieved that goal, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm amazing. And that kind of just stretched from, 5Ks to 10Ks to half marathons. So didn't have much muscle at all. Back in those days, I was around the 60 kilo mark, which is quite a big difference to where I am now at like 80 to 90 kilos as a bodybuilder. So yeah, I'd been running for quite some time, and I was in the gym, and lovely lady, the senior trainer there, who I knew quite well, she came up to me this one day and she said, "Alysha, you train so hard, but you look like," she says. And to be honest, she was kind of right because what happens when you're a long distance runner is you just burn through the muscle and you end up being pretty scrawny and don't have much shape. And sure, you're really fit, but you don't look that great. So she said to me, "Come and train with me for like 3 months, and I'll show you how you can change the shape of your physique." So I sort of thought about it and I thought, all right, I'll give it a shot. And at first, I found it really, really hard because I didn't know what I was doing in the gym. I wasn't allowed to run because she didn't want me burning through muscle. So I found that really hard. But yeah, after the first 3 months, I've gone, you know what? I probably am ready for a fresh challenge. And this trainer actually used to be a bodybuilder. So yeah, I continued training for quite some time before I did my first competition. And that was back, goodness, like 12 years ago now. So yeah, I've been in this sport for quite some time.
What was the most surprising thing about the sport of bodybuilding when you first got into it? Because so many people in the general public are ill-informed about the sport, that there's so many myths about the sport. But then on the other side too, like so many people are shocked by some things about the sport. So what was one thing that surprised you the most about the sport of bodybuilding when you first started?
I didn't realize what a huge impact diet can make. And not only like the right type of food, but at the right time. Yeah, and just learning about, when salt should be added and when salt should be taken out, how much water and when to put water in and when to take water out, preparing for competition. Yeah, I didn't realize just how much science was like involved in the sport. So, coming from a science background for me, it's kind of interesting because I get to do all these little experiments on my own body and see kind of what happens.
I mean, the whole sport is like trial and error as well. So, what has that been like? Like you said, as a science background, and like you said, you can kind of like experiment on yourself, but it's not something that happens overnight. What has that been like trying to find what works best for you?
Yeah, I guess for me, like getting into a good routine is really important. Like for me, I actually get up at 4:30 every day. I go straight to the gym. I train in the gym before going to work. And then once I finish work, I go straight from work back to the gym before coming home for a dinner, shower, and bed. So for me, kind of having that really strict routine ensures that I get everything achieved that I need to in order to be the best athlete I can be.
Don't even get me started on getting up that early because more power to you for that. But there's no way. I mean, you could have a fire alarm blaring right in my ear. You could have an air horn, anything like that. I am not going to get up that early. But again, that's what separates me from these guests that I have on because yeah, they have that drive and that dedication. But I also love to talk genetics on this podcast because I hear this all the time, and it's oh my god, I want his arms, I want her abs, I want their back, and you just want to strangle them because it's like you can train just like someone, you can eat just like them, you're not going to get the same results as them. It's just everyone's body's different, and results may vary. But on top of that, whenever someone first gets started working out, they always have that one body part that really, really takes off that they don't have to train as much. And then they have that
Yeah.
one body part that just drags behind. They have to train to oblivion. What was one body part that really took off for you? And what was one body part that you've just been dragging behind?
Um, Probably for me, like my legs have always been quite strong and quite big. In fact, that's kind of how I got my name because I walked into a new gym to sign up. It was more like a bodybuilding type of gym, which is kind of what I needed back then to kind of progress on. And the day I walked into this gym, like the owner of the gym, he saw me and he's just gone, "Oh my goodness, your legs." And it was actually him that later became one of my coaches and was the person that originally called me Big Red. So, yeah, definitely legs.
And what was one body part that you've been struggling with ever since you started?
Oh goodness. Lots of challenges. Obviously glutes. For a lot of girls, you can train and train and train, but they always need work. My hamstrings, even though I was a runner, like most girls, you hold a lot of fat. They're not necessarily very attractive. So yeah, I've spent a lot of time working on hamstrings and just making sure that now there's definitely no fat there.
I mean, yeah, the legs are a whole different podcast in and of itself. Where it's just I'm 6'3" myself, so anything lower body, don't even ask me about how it is because like calves don't even get me started. That's the most genetic body part in the planet. I don't care what anyone says, but yeah, the legs are just it's always an ever evolving thing. And I was gonna ask you how you got your nickname Big Red, but she answered it right there, everyone. Because one of my friends in high school, his nickname was the same thing, but he was like, there's ginger people, and then there's what my friend was, where he was like a super like it was just so that's why of course everyone nicknamed him Big Red. But that is a great nickname to have. But I mean, this is so much more of a mental sport than it is a physical sport, and a lot of people don't understand that because a lot of times, like if you're walking down the street, someone who might not have seen you for a while might say, "Oh my God, Alysha, you look amazing," but they don't understand that mental transformation that has taken place, which is 100 times more important than any of the physical changes. What has this whole journey been like for you mentally?
Yeah, tough. I mean, there's days where you're so exhausted and just so tired from doing so much training, and your diet is so restricted and the carbs are so low. You feel dizzy, like you want to pass out, but you just got to keep going. You just got to keep pushing and doing whatever you can to kind of get through that next day or that next session. So for me, a lot of caffeine. I live on caffeine. Yeah.
What's your go-to caffeine supply?
Lots of coffee, caffeine tablets, and pre-workouts that have got a lot of caffeine in them. Yep.
I need some tomorrow morning. I'm gonna need some because I'm just dead tired. If you can't see the bags underneath my eyes right now, I am dead tired right now. So I'm probably gonna need something. But for me, Mountain Dew Kickstarter. That is the. I mean, you give me one of those, and even if I were to drink one of those right now, I could probably bounce off the wall. But yeah, that is. I mean, I'm one of those people where I'm hyper enough where I don't normally need that much caffeine, but I definitely understand the need for it. And plus, you tell me you're getting up at 4:30 in the morning, you're not going to be waking up with a smile on your face every single morning. So, you kind of do have to, make it your deal with the devil when it comes to caffeine. But what was your friends and family's reaction like when you announced them, like, hey, I want to give bodybuilding a try? And has it evolved as you've competed more and more in the sport?
Uh, well, actually, my dad, obviously being a bit of an older generation, he sort of said to me, like when I said, I was going to do a bodybuilding competition, he said, now leash, because he calls me leash. He said, now leash, don't get big shoulders. And,
That was his
hmm,
one concern, big shoulders.
that's one concern. And I mean, I've got freaking huge shoulders now. But it's funny because he's kind of, even though he doesn't really say it because he's not one of those type of dads, I think he is kind of proud of what I've been able to achieve over the years. Because often I've kind of asked him to give me a lift to the airport for some competition, so he's got some idea. Yeah, but he certainly doesn't complain about my size or strength. In fact, on occasions, he's kind of called on it to help him out. Yeah.
That is the best answer we've had. Out of all the things that your dad could have said, it was shoulders for some reason. Is don't get too big of shoulders. Out of any body part, out of anything else that he could have said, don't get to. So
Yeah.
yeah, that is great. Have you ever asked him why he said just shoulders?
Uh, no, no.
It's just shoulders for some reason. He must have a thing against. I don't know that, but that is hilarious. That's yeah. I mean, that is honestly something that my parents probably would have said if I ever would have like actually went full on. But they would have come up with like a weird muscle group and just been like, right, don't just make sure your forearms aren't so big, or make sure that like yeah, they would have definitely done that too. So that is great. And I mean, just getting into this sport as well, it is. I mean, not too many people are familiar with it. There's a lot of you know you mentioned bodybuilding. I like to tell people when I mention bodybuilding to some of my friends I have on that I do a bodybuilding podcast as well as some of the other ones that I do, but they say like, oh yeah, those are the people that just go on stage and then they work out a lot. And it's like you got a few of the things down there, but I mean there's so much, lack of information when it comes to bodybuilding. What are some of the biggest myths that you deal with as a bodybuilder from the general public?
Um, Look, I don't think the majority of people don't really quite fully understand that it is a whole lifestyle. It's not just about going to the gym. It's about what you eat, what you drink, and it's not just when you're preparing for a competition. Off season is just as important as on season, because off season is when you have the opportunity to actually make some gains and make some changes to your actual physique and work on those lagging body parts. So yeah, especially like when I've gone to work and, maybe it's a new workplace and people don't understand. I'm not going to be enjoying the morning tea with everyone else. Like, I'm going to bring my chicken and broccoli and I'm going to stand there eating my chicken and broccoli while you eat the party pies and the sausage rolls and the cakes and everything else. Yeah.
You brought it up perfectly because I was just about to ask about nutrition. How do you deal with? I was just about to ask that same exact thing with like, yeah, you're gonna bring in stuff that people aren't gonna, really be that aware of, and you have to watch people eat foods that like would make me drool. So like, especially as you get closer to a show, like if you see anyone eating pizza or anyone eating anything that like, how do you deal with that? Because for me, that would drive me crazy.
To be honest, it doesn't really bother me because, like, I'm so focused on knowing exactly what I need to eat to get the results I need to get. And I'm so focused on getting those results. And I'm just so used to it because I've been in the sport a long time. So I'm very much used to people eating their crappy food. And it doesn't particularly worry me or interest me. So, yeah,
It's crappy
by
until
force.
you put it in your mouth, and it is absolutely delicious. I mean, I'll tell you, hey, it may be bad for you, but it certainly feels good going down, going down. So, but no, I get that as well because yeah, a lot of these and you're talking to an American here, so all the food choices that I have here are like Australians times a billion when it comes to unhealthiness. So yeah, I understand 100%, what you're saying, but I also love to talk about posing because that is one thing that I would have never guessed in a million years before I started this podcast is the hardest thing for a lot of the guests that I have on. It's, one thing that isn't talked about, I don't think as much as it should be. What is your relationship like with posing?
Well, like, I'll never forget, like, learning posing for the very first time for my first show. And this posing coach they had, who was an IFBB pro, she was trying to teach me to kind of, flare my lats and kind of do a front pose, like for the front quarter turns. And she kept like saying, okay, try rolling your shoulders back and stick your lats out. And I'm like, I'm trying, but I just had no lats. So I just really couldn't flex it. I wasn't probably for a couple of years before I actually developed some decent lats where I've gone, oh, okay, it's actually really quite simple. Once you've got the muscle, you can really flex and feel it. So yeah, posing for me was just a whole new world of learning and understanding and practicing and practicing. So yeah, I mean, there's still tweaks that I'm still working on and still doing for like my next shows.
That lat spread is the number one for especially a lot of women. That's like the hardest pose because yeah, like you said, you have to have that muscle first. And it I like to compare it to like riding a bike though, where like once you're able to do it, it's almost impossible to unlearn it. Basically, it's just one of those things where like you're like, oh yeah, I can finally do it now. But out of the poses that you do, what is your favorite pose and what is your least favorite pose?
Oh, I think my favorite would definitely be like a back double bicep. My back stays incredibly lean, and he's pretty crazy looking. So definitely my favorite back double bicep. Probably my least favorite might actually be abs and thighs, only because yeah, my abs are not really the best. Something that I'm still working on. But yeah, hopefully this time round it'll be better than what it's ever been. So that's the plan.
That's always been the answer though, abs and thighs, because it's just such an awkward pose where it's hard to make it look natural and flowy, and it's just yeah, they got to find a new way to showcase because the abs are such an important muscle group. But then just to have a pose just like that where you're just like crunched down, yeah, they got to do something with that, and it's hard too to like because you got to get your legs flexed too, and you got to do all the things. It's just yeah, I could do a whole podcast on the ab and thigh pose because out of all that question that I've asked almost every single person, ab and thigh is like 90%. What people say
Yep.
is their least favorite. But when you are walking on that stage, what is that moment like for you when you're finally able to show off all that hard work that you've worked months upon months on?
For me, it's exciting. I kind of don't really get that nervous because obviously I've done it so many times. For me, yeah, it's kind of exciting to actually finally get out there and actually kind of put on display all my hard work and try and do the very best I can do and be the very best athlete I can be. Irrelevant as to how the other competitors are looking. I'm just trying to be, yeah, the best I can be.
Does time seem to stand still or slow down, or is it sort of a mixture when you're on stage?
Um, I feel like the day really kind of drags on, because there's the lead up, and the hair and the makeup and the tan and all of that takes hours, and then there's all the waiting for your division, and then finally getting backstage, and so it feels like a really, really long day, even though you're only out there for all of like 10, 15 minutes at the most.
Oh, people don't understand from start to finish. It's like a 14-hour day basically for anyone that's competing in these shows, like with all the stuff that goes behind the scenes. And yeah, I learned that the hard way when I went to my first show a couple of months ago. It was just a local show here, and yeah, it started so early, and then by the time it ended, yeah, it was. I that even gained even more respect than I would already had from interviewing a couple hundred bodybuilders, like just how long that show day is. But now we go to my favorite question: what is your go-to post-show meal?
Oh gosh. Um, to be honest, I don't really have a go-to. Like, I remember my first competition, and obviously, I'd never in my life dieted like that, and I've just gone, oh, as soon as I finish this competition, I really, really want some like nice warm chocolate mud cake with vanilla ice cream. Like that was what I wanted. And it was funny because I got to the other end and had finished the competition, and um I'd had some dinner, and then I've gone, actually, I don't really want that ice cream after all. So it's interesting how something that you craved for so long, you then become disinterested in. And to be honest, after eating some naughty food, I kind of feel a bit ill. And I'm very happy to go back to my normal competition diets.
That was the first thing that drove me crazy when I first started talking to some of you guys, is that like, wait, you guys sometimes don't even want to eat that crappy food after a while because your body's just so used to eating healthy for a while, and then you're just so. Hey, again, that's a good problem to have, I guess, to have that aversion to it. But yeah, I mean, I've always made the joke I would just rent out a Five Guys and pay them $1 million and just say, like, you're gonna feed me until I either puke, pass out, or die, and then, either way, I'm gonna get my money's worth. But post show blues is one thing also that really isn't talked about a lot, and
Yeah.
a lot of people don't understand that look that you present on stage isn't sustainable. Like, a lot of people, just because they might see photos year round, where they might think that, like, oh, you must look like that 24/7, which unfortunately isn't the case. And some people try to do that, and that's not the healthiest thing to do. But what was that like when you first realized that, like, this look that I've worked so hard on, I'm not going to be able to maintain it? And has it gotten easier for you to accept that as your career's gone on, that, like, hey, this is not permanent?
It's still hard, to be honest, because like, like after the competition, I'm starting to put fat back on. I'm struggling to find clothes that will actually fit, and I'm not sure about over there, but certainly in Australia, a lot of the women's sizing, they're really not made for bodybuilders. They're not made for women that have lats and that have quads. So it's kind of a bit of a struggle. My go-to is anything with stretchy fabric that can kind of stretch around muscle and fat. But yeah, like, I mean, from the perspective, I understand, and that there's got to be an off season, and I need to, gain some weight. I'm not going to always look like I'm in competition condition. But for me, I try to stay relatively lean-ish, only because it's so much hard work when you've got to burn off all the fat again. So yeah, even though I do put fat back on, most people wouldn't think that I'm overweight. I'm just like, I look bigger.
Well, and when we're talking about myths and stereotypes, I mean, the number one myth that I love to bust on this podcast, it's gotten better the last 5 years, but there's still, unfortunately, a lot of women that have that fear that if they walk into the gym and they look at one dumbbell, they're going to put on 50 pounds of muscle overnight. And, again, if that does happen to you, I'm still searching for that person on this podcast. I haven't found them yet, because if that does happen, I will spend my entire life savings to train with you one time then. But did you ever
Yeah.
have that fear when you were getting started? And even if you didn't, I mean, I bet you still hear that all the time. How do you like to respond to that when people come up with you and have that fear?
Well, look, I never had that fear, but people that were in my life certainly, made comment about how strong I was or how much muscle I had. And for me personally, I've just kind of gone, well, if I decide I don't like how much muscle I've got, I will just go out and I will run and I will burn it off. But I obviously never did do that. And yeah, I've been able to maintain my size and keep growing over the years. So yeah, no, I'm quite happy and quite comfortable to be a little bit unusual, and have this much muscle. To me, it's a product of all my hard work. So yeah, the more muscle, the better from my perspective.
You put it perfectly. Like, I've always said, like, people have always come up with that problem. Like, what if I get too huge? It's like, first of all, just don't work out then. Like, it's not going to stick around forever. Like, you're not going to magically, like, oh, I'm never going to get small. It's like, yeah, and like you said, just go for runs then. Like, you're going to burn it off eventually. It's like, it's not going to be permanent if that's not the look that you wanted, you know, to achieve. But like you mentioned it before, but I like to say, like, you're not the average looking woman. If you're to walk out in public dressed the way you are right now, you are going to get stares, just because it's human nature. I like to
Yeah,
compare it to being like a mini celebrity, where you're just going
yeah.
to draw people's attention, just because it's human nature to look at stuff that's not of the normal. But what has that been like, and has it gotten easier for you to accept the fact that, like, I am going to draw people's attention as the years have gone on?
To be honest, yeah, I don't really notice. Like, I don't really notice people looking at me. But yeah, friends of mine, when they've been out with me, have gone, "Oh, everyone stares at you," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's because I'm a little bit unusual." And some people, like even at the shopping center or at the checkout, they'll give me a compliment and then they'll start asking me questions, and yeah, it'll end up being a whole conversation. So yeah, I actually do get the opportunity to meet a lot of people. Even the checkout chicks, and they'll see me coming through with my, truckloads of protein yet again. And they'll be like, "Any competitions coming up?" So yeah, it's kind of interesting in that you get a lot of support from random people that you otherwise wouldn't have known. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, are there any competitions coming up? I was just about to ask that as well.
Absolutely. I've got a competition here in Perth in 3 weeks. Then I fly to Brisbane, which is on the east coast of Australia, for the national competition in 4 weeks. And then I very briefly fly home before flying out to Spain for competition in like 5 weeks. So yeah, it's all happening very soon.
I was gonna say if you're looking that lean like you're looking right now and not competing, I'd be like, okay, what's the point right now? What are you doing right now? So yeah, that is great. And I mean, I gotta talk about cardio because I hate cardio more than life itself. And when I say cardio, I mean actual running. I love walking, and I know that you're a runner, so this might sound blasphemous, but I just don't like cardio. I've never enjoyed it. What is your relationship with cardio like now, being that you were a runner and now a bodybuilder? Do you still have that love of running, or is it at the point now where you're just like, hey, it's a lesser evil, really?
Yeah, I definitely don't love cardio. I don't know too many bodybuilders that love cardio.
I've met one or
Um,
two, and I've recommended them to like some mental health clinics and stuff like that
yeah,
to get the help that they need. So yeah.
yeah. And I definitely don't run anymore. Except for some intervals. For me, my go-to is more on the revolving stairs, like the stairs that you climb. So yeah, I do a lot of that. I make sure I've got plenty of music to keep me entertained and distracted. And sometimes I'm just hanging on for dear life because I've got no energy left and I'm feeling dizzy, but I'm still going.
Yeah, that cardio is people just don't understand how time consuming it is and how that is where the real dedication I think comes in, especially those hours where you're just not feeling. And where do you think that you go to personally on that level to be able to push through days? Because like everyone has those days where they wake up and they're just not feeling it. And one thing that I think differentiates bodybuilders from the general public is that bodybuilders are able to find whatever it is deep down inside of them to be able to push through on those days when they're not feeling it. Where do you think that comes down for you, motivation
Well,
wise?
yeah, for me as a person, whether it's been like preparing for a competition or other things like study, like I'm actually the kind of person that I am is I'm a highly motivated person. Like when I make a decision and when I set a goal, nothing stops me from achieving that. No matter how hard it gets, I just keep trying and keep chipping away and keep plugging away until eventually I get there. Yeah.
What is one thing that you've done in the gym, whether it be like a lift or anything else, that you are the most proud of?
Ooh. Um, not really say anything I'm most proud of. I don't know, when you've been doing it for years and years, one day kind of rolls into the next. I mean, I have been quite pleased in the most recent off season with how much I've been able to lift. Like certainly more than what I ever had before, which is great. So yeah, like 320 leg press. Sorry, 320 kilos that is on the leg press. And then just like maxing out machines, so machines with the pin loaded equipment. Yeah, once you hit the max, obviously, well, you can't go any heavier. So you've got to get more creative then and do like a superset or drop sets and yeah, make it harder for yourself.
What do you think has really been the main reason why you think that your strength has increased so much this last prep as it was maybe from last year?
I just think just constant improvement, just keep, trying, keep plugging away, eating the right diet, getting really good sleep. Sleep is something that I've been really working on and recovery. So yeah, I've started using a Whoop, which is it's kind of like similar to a watch, but it works on an app. And that tracks my recovery and just yeah, making sure that I get enough sleep and I recover really well before the next session.
Okay, you need to send me whatever that info is for that because I need that more than anything. Oh my
Yeah.
god, sleep is my bane of my existence where oh, I get like one good night of sleep a month basically where I actually get like what I need to get out of it and I'm just yeah, half the time I don't even know what's going on now half the time because you're just so sleep deprived that you're just like okay, what is that? So I need yeah, so whatever that is, I will look that up right now and oh my god. So how is that the probably is there anything else that you've done with your sleep because believe me, I'm taking notes right now because I need this.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, I mean, one of the things that, like, because Whoop comes with a whole bunch of different podcasts and information to try and assist you to try and, achieve better results. So one of the things that I trialed was the blue glasses at night time to try and, minimize the impact of screen time on your sleep. That had, in my view, pretty little
Are they
impact.
actual blue glasses or?
No, the glasses that like block out the blue light. Um, but yeah, for me, that didn't really achieve a great deal. But what did really, really work, and I still do today, is controlled breathing. So basically, as I go to sleep, I do controlled breathing. And yeah, usually I have a much heavier kind of sleep, and yeah, it's incredible. In fact, I recently was unfortunately at a funeral, and the funeral was first thing in the morning. And I realized that I needed to really stay calm because I still needed to work the rest of the day. So whilst the funeral service was occurring, I just sat there and I thought, right, do some control breathing to try and stay calm. And
Was
I
it
really,
quiet enough so like everyone wasn't staring at you and being like, "What the heck is Alysha doing over there?"
everyone was facing forward, so no one
Okay,
could
good.
see
So
me.
she's not. You're not doing
Um,
like vacuums or anything like that, like in the background. No.
but it was amazing because after the funeral, like I looked at my app and it said, "Oh, you had a 30-minute nap." So yeah, basically control breathing means that you can be very, very relaxed, even if you're in quite a stressful environment.
That's like what my mom always used to tell me. She just goes, just count backwards from 100, and then I'd get to one, and I'd be like, okay, now what? I didn't fall asleep doing that. So there's but I have to start. I will look that stuff up myself because that is super interesting to me as well. And if someone were to walk up to you and say, Alysha, I really want to get in shape and maybe start, thinking about maybe bodybuilding, but just maybe just like getting in shape first. What is the best piece of advice that you would like to give them? Because like, let's be honest, everyone needs to get more in shape, especially at this point in the history of the world right now. So, what advice would you have for someone just to get started? Because for so many people, I find that like just taking that first step in is the most important thing.
I think the most important thing, and having learnt through experience, is getting a really good coach, someone that you're going to be able to work with, someone who's going to be able to guide you and support you on that journey. I think that's the most important thing.
What to you makes a coach good? Because I sort of like to compare coaches to kind of like teachers, where it's like you could have one teacher that might scold a kid, and that's exactly what they want, and or that's exactly what they need, and that really helps them. And then you could do that to some other kid, and then that just like crushes them completely. So it's all like individual based, I think, on like what a good coach is. But in your own personal like opinion, what makes a coach good? Because for every good coach, unfortunately, there are a lot of bad coaches, and finding that good
Yeah.
coach can be hard for so many people.
Yeah, look, I've had some incredible coaches over the years, so I'm very, very fortunate. But I think, like, I've certainly found you need to have a coach that's got enough time um, to actually take you on. Like I've had a coach who unfortunately had an awful lot of clients, and I kind of fell down the bottom of the list. So even though it was like an online coaching arrangement, sometimes it would be 2 to 3 weeks before I'd even hear from this coach. And the whole time I'm kind of waiting for feedback and how am I going. Whereas my current coach is amazing. Every 3, 4 days I check in, and I literally will get a response within a matter of hours. So it's good to have that feedback to know I'm on track or I need to tweak something, and let's do that now to keep getting results.
God, waiting weeks for just a response.
Yeah.
Man, how you did that is ridiculous. I mean, that is crazy, but that is again, this is a crazy lifestyle for so many people too. So I mean, hey, it goes with it too. But just yeah, the dedication that the sport requires is just it's so impressive to me. And now we go to my golden questions here at the end of the podcast. If there was one thing that you could change about the sport of bodybuilding and everyone would go along with it, would be one thing that you'd like to see changed?
Ooh. I think leveling out the playing field. Obviously, in some countries, they have some extra special supplements that other countries don't, which means that, you know, some athletes have an unfair advantage over others. So it'd be nice to be able to see some level of consistency so that you're really comparing, you know, one athlete's hard work to another athlete's hard work rather than the extra special stuff that has helped them get there.
I will say, and I know just from looking at some of your photos that you are on the taller side as well. It's like they got to come up with some sort of height division, like really, because it's like
Yeah.
if you're going up against someone who's like 6 to 8 inches shorter than you, it's like you can't really compare that. I mean, it's like it's a different body type, it's a different thing. So that's one thing that I've always preached as well, especially when I've had some of the taller guests on, is that they really got to find a way to differentiate that a little bit.
I must admit, it's been hilarious when I've been on stage and I'm standing right next to a really short girl. And it's so weird because I am quite tall. And, we're in the
How
same.
tall are you?
I'm like 174
Oh
centimeters,
wow,
which is like 6'10", 6'11", something like that. So
like 5'9",
I,
5'10", yeah.
yeah, 5, yeah,
If she
sorry.
said 6'10", 6'11", I'd be like, holy crap.
Well, sorry.
No, not a problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, just that comparison, that is a huge difference, really, and yeah, it's hard to judge that. So yeah, I believe that as well, and I mean, it's like yeah, they got to find a way to make things a little bit more even too. I completely agree with that as well, and just you've been in this sport for 12 years, and bodybuilding is ever evolving and an ever changing sport. I mean, if you were to even look at bodybuilding 5 years ago as to what it is now, it is
Oh,
so
Matt.
different. But from when
Yeah.
you first started to now, what have been some of the biggest changes that you've seen in the sport?
Sure. Look, I guess, particularly like competitions in my hometown here, there's certainly been a huge increase in the number of divisions, a huge increase in the number of like bikini girls. I feel like these days a lot of the competitions are mostly about all the bikini girls, and not too much of the actual traditional bodybuilders. Unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be, at least not in my hometown, the same number of male competitors that there used to be, which is kind of sad because it's a lot of hard work, and it's great to go to a show and actually see what they've been able to achieve.
Yeah, the show that I went to, it was literally 45 minutes of like bikini competitors for like their
Yeah,
segment. Like it was a long, long time, but yeah, that seems to be the one thing that's taking off as well. So yeah, I wish that there'd be more that would go, into the higher divisions as well. But that unfortunately when you're going into the higher divisions, it does take a lot more time to develop that size, and that's I mean, you can't just I have yet
yeah,
to meet one person that just becomes a physique competitor just like overnight and stuff like so it just it takes time and to develop all of that. But yeah, and just with all the stuff that you have and with your shows ahead of time and everything, does your sleep still stay good like as you get ready for the shows? Because I've heard stories of people like as they get
no,
closer and closer to their sleep. Yeah, okay, so thank God at least you said that, because like if you said that you're still sleeping like a saint, up until like the day before, that would drive me crazy.
no, no. From dieting and from training so intensely, it's really hard to get a decent sleep. Like really hard. Some nights I might get 4 or 5 hours. Like I do try to make sure that I do stay in bed for like at least a full kind of 8 hours. But unfortunately, I don't necessarily get that much sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank God. At least she said that, everyone, because I would have been too angry to end this podcast then if she would have said like, "Oh yeah, I'm still sleepless." But lastly, I mean, body dysmorphia. It's a huge thing that impacts, especially the bodybuilding community. And I would have never thought that before I started this podcast. I would have just thought, "Oh, bodybuilders. I mean, they must know that they just look huge, like just from looking in the mirror, and that they look great." But I was shocked when I heard that, like how severe that even impacts, even bodybuilders. So how do you deal with that? It kind of goes along with like the post show blues, but how do you go along with the fact that like when you first become a bodybuilder, they really should just have you sign a contract that says, like P.S. at the bottom, you're never going to be big enough. just accept
Yeah.
that when you do that. So how do you
Yeah.
deal with that whole mental side? Because as an outsider who has never competed, it's fascinating to me, and it's fascinating for everyone else that hasn't competed. That like, oh, these are some of the most in shape people on the planet, but they still suffer from something that you wouldn't think that they would.
Yeah, no, definitely always want more muscle. For me personally, I just focus on my next training session and trying to lift heavier or more reps than what I've done in the past. So just always focusing on trying to improve. Yeah, and then the muscle, well, as long as the diet's right, it's going to happen. So, yeah, a long, slow process, though.
Again, yeah, that's what makes this sport I think so special. Is like you said, it takes time and it's not going to happen overnight. And when we do have you on a year from now, because I'd love to talk to you in a year to see what you've been up to and see where you're at. Where would you like to be at in your bodybuilding? Where would you like to be at just in your overall life? What are some goals that you'd like to have achieved when we have you on a year from today?
Well, hopefully, I would have racked up a few more wins at a few more competitions. That's kind of always the plan. Next year, I'm kind of still waiting to see what the schedule's like to be able to kind of work out and plan. Hoping that Arnold's Australia will be back next year. Unfortunately, with COVID over here and the restrictions, we basically haven't had a show since the debacle of Arnold's 2020. So yeah, hopefully it'll be back because it's held in Melbourne, which is a city that I have sponsors and a lot of friends and fans in. So yeah, it'd be nice to get back to Melbourne because I haven't been there since then.
I wasn't even going to bring it up because I totally forgot, but I forgot like how restrictive Australia has been with COVID. We're like, I
Massively.
I would have gone insane. I would have probably burned something to the ground or something like that. But like because honestly, like yeah, for us here, at least for where I am, it hasn't like October of 2020 is when like everything like really lifted really, and like we were just everything kind of went back to somewhat more of a normalish kind of thing. But yeah, that is. I remember even talking to a guest from Australia last year and like, oh yeah, we're still in lockdown. I was like, wait, what? It's been like over a year for us that we haven't been in lockdown. They're like, oh yeah, it's so. Yeah, that is fascinating. Well, first of all, how did you stay in shape during lockdown? I got to ask that too, because now that we talked about COVID, before we wrap things up, because that to me was like I was so concerned about my bodybuilding guests that I had on as soon as lockdown happened, because I was like, oh my god, if they don't have home gyms, I don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, I certainly did go a bit stir crazy because it was really harsh being in lockdowns. But fortunate for me, I actually have a dedicated gym room in my house with a whole bunch of equipment, which kind of kept me going, at least until I could get back into a normal gym.
Okay. Well, at least there's that. They became huge commodities, and I remember people were just selling them for absolutely insane prices.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, Alysha, I cannot thank you enough for coming on and sharing your journey with us. I mean, it was an absolute delight to have you on. I can't wait to see how you do in these shows. I honestly think you're gonna do great, but I'm always biased because I have the guests on. But no, I'm not joking when I say that. Like you look amazing, and I think you're gonna do great. And I cannot wait to have you on and see what you've been up to. And again, I cannot thank you enough. And lastly, is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap it up?
um, no, not that I can think of at the moment.
Short, simple. I
my,
like it.
my my brain's fuzzy from low carb.
Yeah. Hey, no worries at all. I've had other guests on too where I they have the prep brain diet kind of going on, and hey, I understand that as well, and but I do have to say again, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you.
All right. Well, everyone, go and follow her on our Instagram page. I'll leave a link. Excuse me, down below. Buy everywhere. You will get inspired to get off that couch and stop eating all those Twinkies and get in shape. But again, you guys, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing off. Have a great day, everyone.